Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy
Mega Meeple!
Greetings and welcome to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and games that bring them together. This is episode 52, and just want to start this episode out with a big thank you to all of you who went to the Dice Tower board game breakfast video. It's episode 227, dropped last week, May 7th. And it about the 33-minute mark or so, you see yours truly on there. So appreciate everybody who went to that video, gave it a thumbs up, and commented on there. We had some good feedback, some good conversations in the comments section, and appreciate everybody saying that they wanted to see more of the Mega Meeple guy. So hopefully Tom will contact me again to have me submit another video, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, now I could now call myself a Dice Tower contributor to the breakfast board game breakfast. That's pretty cool. I never thought I'd even be anywhere near that that name. I just. Nothing against them. I just thought that, I was too small beans, or maybe I was too edgy or something like that for their content. But, I submitted an audition video, and Tom liked it and put it in the show. So and the feedback was good. So we'll see where this goes from here. But this is going to be a real quick segment. I'm not going to go much. I'm not going to do a rant or that much of a commentary thing, because I want this week's episode guest is Patrick Marino, and he's talking about the Kickstarter game, which is wrapping up here in the next few days, called Court of the Dead. So we'll get to that interview real quick. One of the things about putting these podcasts together is I really enjoy it when half the work is already done. I have, over the past, I'd say 2 months, have interviewed numerous people. So what we're on episode 52, I think I have enough guests already recorded and in the can to take me out to just short of Gen Con. I'm good. Just recently I interviewed Hobby, who was the creator and designer of, or the brains behind My Little Scythe, along with his 7-year-old daughter. And then I've set up a interview with Jamie Stegmeyer. He will be on the show for the third time, talking about My Little Scythe, as well as the upcoming final expansion to Scythe, and a few other things that we're going to be discussing. So that's that. You could look forward to that that episode, just shy of Gen Con. I'll put that out there. But yeah, between now and maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Gen Con, I already have the guest already lined up for each episode. So for those of you who I've interviewed, 2, 3, 4 months ago, you're wondering, where the hell is my interview? Don't worry, your episode is coming. It's, and one of the wild things about having so many guests and doing a podcast is just kind of prioritizing. Just as far as like timing, like for example, this week's guest, I want to try to get that episode out before the Kickstarter ended, so you people would be get some info on that. So that's about it. So and so a lot of the other interviews that are not really time sensitive, I could pretty much put them anywhere. It's I mean, I'm not saying that those guests are not important, but when you have time sensitive guests that have a game coming out, and you have to correspond it and collaborate it with the release date. I got to put those guests on specific week episodes. But have no fear. We have people. We have like Kathy Ford of Our Turn podcast. We have none other than Chaz Marler from the Dice Tower and Pair of Dice Paradise. And also the creator and the programmer behind the PodPledge crowdfunding page, which has really helped a lot of content creators out there. And I have a page on there for PodPledge. So if you want to help with the hosting cost, and believe me, those, even if it's like $5 a month, that really, really helps out. To help out with the website hosting, Libsyn hosting, stuff like that. For those of you who don't know, I'm disabled physically and medically, so I'm on SSDI, and anybody who is on disability knows that that's not a rich man's. Yeah, so even the games that I get, I have to do some really creative budgeting and trying to figure out what if a game is really, really worth it. But again, just a monthly hosting cost of just keeping this thing going. And I mean, I'll record these episodes, no problem. Maintaining the availability of the downloads really depend pretty much on people's donations. So if you're able to afford $5 a month, go to our PodPledge page and help the show. And if you can't support the show that way, just spread the word. Tell people in your gaming circles about the show and the podcast and the YouTube channel and the Facebook page and this, that, and the other. Just get the word out there, because I'm a one-man show, and I could only wear so many hats. My little social circle of gamers and gaming community only goes so far, and it's not only who you know, but who the people who you know, who they know, that helps too. So if that makes sense, you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. But if support the show, either the few dollars a month to help with the hosting costs and Libsyn fees and all that are logistical crap of just keeping this show on the airwaves. And if you can't do that, just spread the word. Word of mouth means a lot and goes a long way. Or do both. Hell, yeah. But doing both is good too. But all right, that's enough of my. I usually say this crap till the end of the episodes. But I'm thinking, it's like, well, people may once the guest signs off, people may turn off the episode and it's like, okay, that's it, and they don't hear the little commercial at the end of the episode to even know that we do have a PodPledge page out there. So yeah, I don't talk much about it, so I'm gonna afford myself to talk about it. A little commercial right here. So that said, let's go to the guest for this episode. And again, if you want to hear more guests in further episodes, go to our PodPledge page. but and if you haven't already, check out the Dice Tower Board Game Breakfast. It's episode 227. And you just make a comment on there. Ask me a question on there. I'll answer. Or just a comment that you want to see more of the Mega Meeple guy. I know that a few people have already done that, but if you haven't seen that video already, go check it out. I think it'll be. I bring up a very interesting topic that people have been intrigued by, and caused quite a bit of thought-provoking and some good conversations and comments in their comment section. So, yeah, go check that out. But let's go on to our guest this episode. Patrick Marino, talking about Court of the Dead. welcome back to the Mega Meeple. And as it is pretty typical for our podcast at this point, if anybody's listened to any amount of time, is we like to bring people on that have some really cool Kickstarters. I know I'm still looking for a support group for recovering Kickstarter backers, and I haven't found it yet. So we got, but. This episode, we have talking about Court of the Dead, Mourners Call. We have Patrick Marino. How you doing, Patrick?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
Doing good. Now, you are with Project Ray Gun, but tell us a little bit about Project Ray Gun and USAopoly and how those, what's the relation between those two?
Sure. So USAopoly is a company that's been making games for well over 20 years now, doing a lot of licensed and co-branded stuff, some original family-style games, party games like Telestrations, things like that. We've done a lot of work with Hasbro on different Monopolies and Clue-type games, as well as our original stuff. But Project Ray Gun was started as sort of an imprint brand within USAopoly to help us dive a little deeper into the hobby game space. And so last year we released The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31, based on the John Carpenter film, as a hidden identity type of game that really capitalizes on the paranoia in that film as part of the gameplay. And so that was our first big release. And now we are working on Court of the Dead, which is live on Kickstarter now.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into gaming, and how you got started with the game industry.
Sure. So I've kind of always been a gamer as far back as I can remember. When I was younger, my older brother and I would play games like Hero Quest and Magic the Gathering and things together. A couple of years ago, I guess 7 or 8 years ago now, I got back into gaming much more heavily than I had been, playing a lot of games like Catan and Agricola, some heavy Euros, that kind of stuff, and just sort of went down the rabbit hole from there and started designing my own games. My brother and I co-designed quite a few games, some of which we were fortunate enough to sign with a publisher that will be out from a different publisher from before my time here at Project Ray Gun. So those will be out either later this year or early next year. And was very involved in the local gaming community here in San Diego. We're fortunate enough to have several publishers in the area, quite a few designers as a result. So pretty strong indie game community in this space. I started working with other folks to run the Unpubs out here to let designers play test games. Built a network through that. I got to know some of the folks here at USAopoly pretty well. And almost a year ago now, they reached out to me and indicated they had a project that they could use an extra designer for. Brought me in to see if I'd be interested, and that very quickly turned into a full-time job here, designing games, which is a thing I have to remind myself on a daily basis how extremely lucky I am to be able to do what I love every single day.
Yeah, definitely. It's like if, as the saying goes, you find something that you enjoy doing, you never have to work another day in your life. And
exactly.
Well, first of all, congratulations on a successful Kickstarter. I mean, this at the time this episode drops, you still have a few more days left. So if you haven't jumped on board, because you have until, I think it looks like Friday, late Friday, May 18th is when it goes. So, but I mean the goal was like 75,000, and you guys have blown that out of the water by about a good $210,000. So this game is going to see the light of day. So no worries about that. But I mean, first of all, when I was just flipping through Kickstarter, just kind of perusing through what's new and stuff like that. I mean, just first of all, it's a cool name of the game. I mean, Court of the Dead. It looks like I mean, it sounds like one of those movies that George A. Romero would put his name to if he made a movie like that. Court of the Dead. But also just the artwork on at least the box alone, and as I was looking through the cards and the artwork on the game is really lavish and very beautiful. So, how did you have like one artist do all the stuff on that, or did you commission different artists for that?
So we actually have a pretty deep team on this one, and the reason being is the Court of the Dead is an original IP that came out of Sideshow Collectibles. So folks might know Sideshow Collectibles for a lot of the work they've done with Disney and Marvel and Star Wars, and they do these premium format collectible figures. So if you want, a super detailed Iron Man or Hulk figure or Stormtrooper, if you want the best of the best in collectibles, Sideshow is where you're going to go to get those. The creative team over there put together their own IP, which has a book called The Chronicle of the Underworld, which is sort of your encyclopedia introduction to this world. And then there's a series of comics that are available that start to unfold the story. And then there's a bunch more content coming starting later this year with the first novel in the series that will kind of unlock more of these characters and dive a little bit deeper into the lore. And so one of the things that they wanted to do was tell a story or tell this story through a game and create an experience. And Tom Gilliland, who created the storyline originally, is a gamer, and so this was something that was high on his list. But because of the other work with the graphic novels and with the Chronicle book, there was already a team of artists who had been working on character concepts and original artwork. So, for example, the box art you see is, and all of the box sleeves, which are Kickstarter exclusives, are all original oil and acrylic paintings by Alex Horley, who has done a bunch of work in other game spaces and in comics, and has a relationship with Sideshow. So he had done some of those paintings previously for the sleeves and then created the original box art for us as part of this project. But then the art on the court cards, the Mourner cards, all of that is a variety of different artists who've worked on Court of the Dead content that we were able to pull from a pretty rich catalog that Sideshow had available in terms of the artwork.
That's cool. And one of the things that another thing that jumped out at me with the Kickstarter is I like it when people keep things simple. And so the support, and of course, we have the $1 pledge, which I think is a foregone conclusion. I think it's every Kickstarter has that. But you have the Kickstarter pledge, and then you have the retailer pledge, and that's pretty much it. So there's not a whole lot of finagling around trying to figure out, okay, what do I want, what do I need, that type of thing. And the stuff you have on here with the Kickstarter exclusives are fantastic. So tell us about how the game came to be, and how they got from the Underworld mythos or lore to the point where it's like, okay, let's get this into a board game of a format.
Sure. So as I mentioned, Tom Gilliland, the creator, is a gamer. He plays a lot of miniatures games, some historic games like Bolt Action, things like that. But he's been gaming for many years. He's a miniatures painter and collector, and so I think as he was developing the story and as they were doing world building at Sideshow, it became apparent that the lore was really ripe for a gamer audience. So through a licensing agency, we were kind of presented with this opportunity here at Project Raygun to work with Sideshow. And this was right around the time I was hired on here. It was the first project I was given, actually, which is unbelievable luck to sort of walk in the door and from day one be partnered up with Sideshow and their incredible team, and to be working with a licensing entity that is made up of gamers who wanted to play test and do the development. When we started the project, we were originally thinking this game would go straight to retail. We don't have a history with Kickstarter. here, and we thought we'll produce a modest print run and take this heavy hobby game to retail. The more development we did with Sideshow, the more we realized they're known for ultra premium everything. Top end artwork, top end 3D, top end collectibles, and we wanted to make sure that this game could unlock all of that. And so, as you mentioned, like all of the Kickstarter exclusives, the metal coins, and the so many upgrades to the component quality and stuff are really a cornerstone of this campaign. And so, as we kind of progressed, it started to become apparent that Kickstarter was going to be the platform where we could get the fan buy-in and backing and support and ideas for what some of those stretch goals should be, and to build that community. And so we made a decision to kind of take a game that was made for retail and wasn't sort of designed with Kickstarter in mind, with lots of miniatures and add-ons and extra costs and things like that, and just bring it into a really clean and simple campaign, as it's our first endeavor in Kickstarter. We didn't want to overcomplicate things, but we also wanted to create a nice experience for backers where, for your one pledge, you get everything. And some of that was motivated by our partnership. We brought in James Hudson from Druid City Games, who did most recently Sorcerer City, and before that, The Grim Forest. Mm-hmm. We brought in James in his rich marketing background to kind of guide us through the process. And given that this game doesn't have a ton of extra modular content that we could throw on top of it, this was the strategy from the get-go. Let's just create a really clean campaign, but use the campaign to bring people the absolute best version of this game that we can. And so that's kind of where we started from. And as you'll see in the comments, we've had a lot of very active backers who are with us every step of the way and giving us feedback on what they like, what they don't like, what they hope to see. And we're trying to integrate as much of that as we can, while also maintaining the integrity of the gaming experience and the core mechanics that we started off with.
Right, and definitely, I could say as a backer and a consumer, that really helps for people like me, that when it comes time to budget, things would, especially with the pledge manager launches and stuff, like, okay, all right, well, we know exactly right off the bat how much money to budget for that time frame of okay, what to plan on, and there's no big surprises coming on as far as extra components or extra shipping or anything like that. So it's that's very at least to me, that's very appealing as far as just keeping it simple. Tell us a little bit about how the game plays out and what the winning victory conditions are and the mechanics.
Yeah, so the goal here is to introduce potentially new fans to Court of the Dead and the big picture story of what's happening in the Underworld, and also to allow existing fans of Court of the Dead to kind of get their hands-on experience and really be able to manipulate and experience this world. And so the overarching story is that heaven and hell are at war with each other, and that war is fueled using soul energy from the mortal realm where we all live. And death in the Underworld was created as a way of effectively collecting that energy and funneling it up to both heaven and hell for their war. And so in this circumstance, like, hell is not seen as bad and heaven good. They're just kind of these warring entities that have gotten so deep in this war they've lost sight of greater purpose other than defeating one another. Death realizes he doesn't want to just harvest our energy and have it go to ultimately be fuel. He recognizes that those souls have memory and personality and all these things. And so he devises his own plan to siphon off some of that soul energy to build his own forces in the Underworld and eventually overthrow heaven and hell. So in the game, we are sort of in the pre-stages of preparing the Underworld for that war. But the challenge here is there are multiple factions in the Underworld. So you've got bone, flesh, and spirit. And even within those factions, there's different ideas about the best way to unify the Underworld. And so at the start of the game, every player is going to be given 3 objective cards, one unique objective from each faction. They'll choose one of those to play and sort of declare their allegiance for that faction. So their allegiance is publicly known, but their objective is not. And what those objectives do is sort of set up your strategy for the game. What different approach are you going to take this time based on how you're going to score some extra points when the game is done. From there, you'll get to choose a mourner. So the characters in the Underworld are known as mourners, and you get to choose one from the faction deck for the faction you've aligned with, and so you get a starting character that will help you complete your quest. And those mourner cards build together as a tableau, so it's a bit of an engine building mechanic there. The more characters you get, the more you can pair them off of one another and get some extra bonuses and things as you play the game. On the board, there's going to be a number of Unity tokens, and that's the timer for the game. So as players collect these Unity tokens, it progresses the game towards the end and signals that the Underworld is effectively ready to engage in this war that they've been planning. But as you collect those Unity tokens, typically the Celestial Suspicion meter is going to increase, which represents heaven and hell kind of being clued into what you're doing in the Underworld. So there's this cooperative element where players have to keep that meter managed because the higher it goes, the more of their ethereal resource they have to give up to heaven and hell to keep them busy and occupied with their war. So keeping that meter low is good because it allows you more resources to achieve your goals in the Underworld. At the same time, there's this other storyline in the Court of the Dead that deals with the Dread Script, and this is sort of this internal force that all mourners have to deal with, whereas if they express too much power, too much greed, they act in their own personal best interest too often, they can become corrupted by this force known as the Dread Script and ultimately converted into a mindless entity known as a Raker. So there's another track that players have to manage as they build their power. The Dread Script track will increase, and the higher it gets, the more risk there is that they'll lose various figures they have on the board to this disease. So there's this cooperative element of maintaining the tracks, of collecting the Unity, but ultimately only one player will win by completing their hidden objective better than the other players, by increasing their influence over the 3 factions of Bone, Flesh, and Spirit, and by collecting those Unity tokens, which are worth victory points at the end of the game. There's a lot of mechanics in this one, which at first glance can seem kind of overwhelming, but the consistent feedback we've had from reviewers is it only seems that way at first glance, and we've done a really good job, I think, with our development team here, who's been on my case. Andrew Wolf is our in-house developer, to make sure that everything is as streamlined as it can be, as intuitive as it can be, to make the game flow, and for each sort of phase within a round to integrate seamlessly with the other phases that precede it and come after it. And so there's a phase where the Etheria comes into the Underworld, and we have an I cut, you choose mechanic where it's distributed among players. There's some card drafting we use to select our court cards, which represent the most powerful characters in the Underworld. And those are the cards you'll use in that round, so you'll form a hand of court cards. There's a Wallows mechanic, so the Wallows are the wildlands around the city of Ilverness, which is the capital city of the Underworld. And there's these side quest cards that players get every round, and so you have to make some tough choices about how many resources you want to devote to the side quest, which can earn you some really powerful rewards, but also detracts you from your core purpose and your ulterior motive. So there's some tough choices to be made there. And then you have an action phase, and during the action phases, when you're using your cards, you're getting more figures, which are movers that you can put out onto the board. You're using your resources, you're gaining influence, you're doing all the things that are going to ultimately get you rewards and points during the game. Then we resolve an area control mechanic where having the most figures in a location is going to get you a benefit associated with that location, but also having the most figures of a particular type will get you a benefit for that guild. So there are 6 guilds that have figures that you can recruit, and having the majority in a guild gets you another bonus that you can use. And then following that, or in addition to that, there is a need for us to resolve the meters I talked about earlier, the Dread Script and the Celestial Suspicion. So players have to first resolve the Dread Script, which can eliminate some of their figures from the board, which is going to impact those area majorities. And then there's also the need to collectively pay a tithe to Heaven and Hell to send some of that ethereal energy resource to them. And so during the action phase, some of that will accumulate, but ultimately players will sort of blind bid or blind contribute an amount, but contributing more than your opponents will earn you extra bonuses. So being sort of the altruistic player has its benefits. So we go through all that, we resolve a cleanup phase, and then we repeat this cycle. And so typically a game will last 3 rounds and roughly 90 minutes, sometimes faster for experienced players, which was also an important thing we wanted from this, was a little bit more of a succinct experience compared to some of the other games in that same hobby space. You know, how do we create all of that strategy and all of that excitement from that experience in a package that's easy to get to the table again and again.
That's great, because there's quite a bit of meat to the game. So it's not where like one particular player that may be good at a particular mechanic can really hang their hat on something. There's quite a few things that they need to take into consideration, both in their strategy as well as counteracting the strategy of the other players at the table. So there's quite a bit. Get your hands dirty in there and just dig in. Now you mentioned the 3 factions. We have Bone, Flesh, and Spirit. I think the cool thing too is you have at least on the Kickstarter page, you have a quiz that people could take to find out which faction is sort of like their spirit animal type of thing. So, but can you go over the 3 factions and how each faction, if they have a particular ability or something that some mechanic that really caters to them?
Sure. Yeah. So the quiz is actually great too for folks. I'll start there. That quiz predates the game, and it was actually part of the lore from the beginning of the sideshow. But one of our Kickstarter exclusives is custom box sleeves that have unique art on them, and we have 1 per faction. So, backers of the campaign are going to want to jump on that quiz, figure out what faction they most align with, and select the sleeve. Although, we certainly have folks who said, well, the quiz says I'm Bone, but I love the spirit art, so I'm gonna grab that one. But ultimately, the Bone faction is the most rigid in the Underworld. They have a very specific vision for how the Underworld should be united, and they think that the other factions would be best served by getting in line with their very structured approach. A lot of the mechanics you'll see related to the Bone faction deal with resources. Many of the Order of the Mortis Knighthood are from the Bone faction, and the Mortis Knighthood is the guild responsible for actually coming into the mortal realm and harvesting soul energy. So they are the ones that collect the ethereal resource, and so you'll see that mechanic played out in the game. They also have the bureaucrats, the Council of Osteomancy, and so they sort of keep tabs on the influence resource and keep the records there, and so that's another common theme among that faction. The Flesh faction is all about adapting. So in the lore, the Flesh faction is known for constantly changing their appearance in the Underworld, and so members of the Flesh faction will go to the Shroud Reeves Coven and have extra arms grafted on and things like that. But the Shroud Reeves are also the ones who are able to take soul energy and tie it into sort of these bodies that they build in the Underworld to give it an actual physical presence and to make mourners take shape in the Underworld, so they can sort of siphon off these souls and shape them into sort of undead entities in the Underworld. So their mechanic is related to that. Their mechanics help you get more figures. Their guild helps you get more figures, but they also have the Conclave of Shadows Guild, which are the assassins in the Underworld. And so they also, as much as they help create new life, they take it away as well mechanically. and their faction is all about adapting. The Spirit faction is about healing. It's about managing the Dread script. It's about sort of this greater unity purpose of the Underworld. It's much less structured than the other two. They don't have a sort of home base or building that they operate out of. It's more of a collective, so to speak. And so they give players a lot of advantages in terms of their mechanics and their ability to manage the Dread script threat, to avoid it altogether in some circumstances, and to do things for the greater good that ultimately earn unity points is a really common theme in the mechanics for the Spirit.
All right, cool. Now, and for those in our listening audience, want to also make note that there is no solo mode for this game. It's planned at this point. I don't know if you could if you could speak to if that's going to be a plan in the future, or if that's something that's just off the table right now.
It's been a common request among Kickstarter backers. It's a 2 to 5 player game. But we recognize, not everybody lives in an area where they have access to a regular gaming group, or maybe this game appeals to them, but not the rest of their gaming friends. One of the challenges is the way the semi-co-op nature of the game is structured, and the area majority mechanics are put together, makes it challenging to create a solo mode without having sort of an AI player, which is difficult to do with the number of mechanics present here.
Yeah.
There's been some thought and some discussion on it, but as of right now, we don't have a solo mode planned. That may be something that comes down the line in a future project.
Assuming all the logistics and so forth go smoothly. I mean, Kickstarter is what it is, but the estimated delivery for the game is December of this year, at least to Kickstarter backers. So when would this game, for people who's maybe listening this month or so down the road that missed the Kickstarter, when is it planned to be available in retail?
That's a good question, because right now our main emphasis is on the Kickstarter backers and making sure that we can keep everything on time for them for that December delivery date, which shouldn't be an issue for us in terms of, as I said, this company has 20 years experience producing games. We have really good relationships with our manufacturers. We've built some extra time into the schedule just to play it safe. So I think we'll be on track for that. I suspect when we do our Kickstarter run, we'll also have the company get to work at the same time on the retail runs for the game, which will be very similar in terms of the content. They won't have the Kickstarter exclusive metal coins and some of the other upgrades, but there's some opportunities for efficiency in combining the production there. But we'll definitely be fulfilling all of the Kickstarter pledges before the game is available in retail. So I would suspect sometime early 2019, hopefully in that first quarter, is when you'd see the regular retail version hit stores.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for being with us. I know you must be really, really busy especially with the Kickstarter starting to wind down. But if people want to find out more about the game or about Raygun, where could they go?
Sure. So you can certainly visit our page on Kickstarter, join the conversation there in the comments, and follow along with the campaign up until the 18th. Beyond that, you can follow Project Raygun on Facebook. You can follow Court of the Dead on Facebook to be connected with the Sideshow team and the rest of the storyline and the lore of Court of the Dead. And, of course, you can find us on our website, which is projectraygun.com.
All right. And, of course, we'll have links to all those things in the show notes of this episode. Well, Patrick, thank you so much again, and congratulations on a successful Kickstarter, and looking forward to playing this game, hopefully before Christmas. It'll be a Christmas gift to myself here.
That's the goal. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this episode. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned next week, as my guest will be Jonathan Mariucci, talking about the Hexplorit universe and games, And if you haven't already, go to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast. While you're there, give it some 5-star loving and leave us a happy review. Really appreciate it. Helps us out a lot. We're also on Podbean and Spotify. And follow us on all of our social media crap. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, blah, blah, and all the usual suspects. And the links to all those things are found on the social media page on the website. Mentioned a little earlier in the episode, I gave a little commercial. Just a final reminder, if you'd like to support the show, you go to our PodPledge project page. Spitting all over my microphone. And give us donate their pledge on a per episode or per month basis. And that really helps us out with the hosting costs and logistics of all that crap. But also tell all your friends about us. Spread the word. And we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And we hope you will join us again next week. So until then, this is Tom saying, we'll see you at the gaming table.